Hi there students, this is Dr. Thomas. In this video I am going to go through some problems from the first readiness test, and some of the concepts covered on the first readiness test in Math 098 are solving equations with decimals, and solving equations with fractions. So in this short video we will talk about problems that look like these problems. So if you would like, you could pause the video and work out problems 1 through 8. It shouldn't take you more than 30 minutes to complete all of the problems, and when you're done you can press play and you can see an explanation for numbers 1 through 8. So in the readiness test, test 1, these are some of the concepts that will be covered. This test 1 is about 14-15 problems, so this is half of the test. Okay, so if you learn these type of concepts, you're halfway there. Let's get started. Alright, let's cover number 1 first. Number 1 is 9x plus 11 equals 4 plus 5x plus 2x. So what should you do first? Alright, what you should do is you should add like terms. So as you can see here, 5x plus 2x are like terms on the right side. So if you have like terms on either side, go ahead and add those terms together on that particular side. As you can see here, there are no like terms on the left side, but there are on the right side. So what I'm going to do is begin to write down number 1. So this is the problem we're doing. So we have 9x plus 11 equals 4 plus, and since we have like terms here, 5x plus 2x, we can add that together and it becomes 7x. Now your next task is to get the like terms together. As you can see, we have an x and an x on both sides. We want to go ahead and get those together, or we could go ahead and get our numbers together, but I choose to get my 7x over here with the 9x, and I can do that mathematically by subtracting 7x from this side. So let me subtract 7x, and 7x minus 7x, that cancels out from that side. So what we have now is 2x plus 11 equals 4. Now what we need to do is we need to get the 11 over here to the right side. Since that's a positive 11, we do the inverse of adding. We subtract to get rid of it. 11 minus 11 cancels out. So what's remaining on this side is just a 2x equals 4 minus 11 is negative 7. Now you have 2x, which means 2 times x. So in order to get rid of the 2 here, we do the inverse of multiplication. The inverse of multiplication is division, so divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, of course, but we say this cancels out, and it's understood that the coefficient is 1 and we have an x. Since a coefficient of 1 is understood, we don't write it. We just write down the x. It's understood to be 1 times x already. X equals negative 7 over 2. Let's go to number 2. 9x minus, then you have a parenthesis, 3x plus 1 equals 17. So what does that minus in that parenthesis indicate here? It means you have to distribute. But what are you distributing? It's understood to be a 1 here. So that's a negative 1 times everything inside of the parentheses. So since it is a 9x, then we distribute negative 1 times a positive 3x is negative 3x. So we write it as minus 3x. Negative 1 times a positive 1 is negative 1. So we write minus 1 equals 17. Notice that we have like terms over here now. So we need to get those together. 9x minus 3x is 6x. We write down minus 1 equals 17. Now we're going to add 1 to both sides because that's a negative 1, and you always have to do the inverse of the operation that's here. You can't subtract 1 from this and it go away. You have to do the inverse of the operation. So since this is minus 1, we add 1 to both sides. Negative 1 plus 1 cancels out. So now you have a 6x equals 18. Then you divide by 6 because that was 6 times x. And the inverse of multiplication is division. The 6's will cancel out. Now you have x equals 3. So your final answer for number 2 is 3. Alright, we have 6 and then a parenthesis, x minus 2, close parenthesis, minus 5 equals negative 1 plus 5x. What does that number right beside the parenthesis imply? It implies that we have to use the distributive property and we have to multiply the number times everything inside of the parentheses. So we have to distribute again. 6 times x is 6x. 6 times a negative 2 is negative 12. So we write minus 12. Then let's rewrite everything else over. Now that we've written everything over, we see that we have like terms. Negative 12 minus 5. So we have a 6x minus 17 equals negative 1 plus 5x. Now we want to get our like terms on the same side. So as you can see, we have a 5x on the right, 6x. So what could we do? We could subtract 5x from both sides. That way I end up with a positive leading coefficient. 6x minus 5x is just x, or it's understood as 1x, of course. Then we have minus 17 equals negative 1. Since we subtracted 5x from the right side, that cancels out. Now we're trying to get x by itself. So we add 17 because that was a negative 17. So you do the inverse of that. Since it was minus 17, we add 17. To both sides, of course. Now we have x equals negative 1 plus 17 is 16. Make sure that you understand integer rules. That's the foundation for doing well in this course. Make sure you understand integer rules. In order to solve number 4, since we have fractions, we need to determine the LCD. The LCD is the least common denominator. So you look at all your denominators, 9, 3, and 9, to determine what number can 9 and 3 go into evenly? Or what is the lowest number that both 9 and 3 can go into evenly? The answer is 9, because 3 can go into 9 3 times, and 9 can go into 9 1 time. That's the lowest number that both 9 and 3 can go into. Since that's your LCD, what you can do to get rid of fractions is multiply both sides by the LCD. So I try to get this across, and I reiterate multiplying by the LCD to get rid of the fractions. I still get students who try to work with the fractions. The disadvantage is most of the time students get lost in the fractions and they end up getting the problem wrong. So I suggest and reiterate now, get rid of the fractions first. So since the LCD is 9, let's multiply both sides by 9. If I multiply both sides by 9, I end up having to distribute this 9, of course, and I'm going to write it all out so you can see it. If I multiply, let me write it out. I need to multiply 9 times 1 over 9x. I need to multiply 9 times 2. I need to multiply 9 times 1/3 x minus, I need to multiply 9 times 2 over 9. I suggest that you write it all out like this so that you can start canceling things out properly. Because you could do this in your head if you're really good at it, but in order to avoid mistakes, I will write everything out like this line right here. That way we can go back and cancel things out. Since I know that's 9 times 1 over 9, I know that's a 1 here, I can cancel these 9's out, as you can see. Then I'm left with just an x on this side because everything canceled out to 1. Plus, nothing cancels here. It's 9 times 2, which is 18. Here I have a fraction again. That's 9 over 1. I know that 3 goes into 9 3 times. So I have 3 times 1, which is just 3. And I bring down my x minus. Again, I have my fractions. I know that 9 cancels with the 9. And the only thing that's left is a 2. So I write that down. Notice how we got rid of fractions right from the start. If you don't get rid of all your fractions, you did not multiply by the correct number. Alright, so you shouldn't have fractions in this next step. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to get my x's together first. I'm going to subtract x because if I subtract x, I get a positive 2x over here on the right side versus subtracting 3x and getting a negative. Then I'll have to have an extra step that I'm avoiding by going ahead and subtracting x from both sides. X minus x cancels out. I have 18 equals 3x minus x, 2x minus 2. Then add 2 to both sides. We get 20 equals 2x. How do we get rid of this 2 from this side? We divide by 2. 2's cancel out. So our final answer is x equals 10. Alright, number 5 also contains fractions. So again, when your equation contains fractions, determine the LCD. Okay, the LCD. So the denominators we're looking at, 4 and 5. What number can both 4 and 5 go into evenly? But we want the lowest number, so that we won't make big numbers, or we won't create big numbers that we have to deal with. We want the lowest number that both 4 and 5 can go into. Now, 4 and 5 can go into this number evenly, or can be divided into this number evenly. So the LCD of 4 and 5 is 20. So let me first write down the original problem. And now we're going to multiply both sides by the LCD, which is 20. Notice this problem is a little different. We have parentheses here. We will multiply 20 times 1/4 and leave that number on the outside, but we don't multiply 20 times anything on the inside of the parentheses, because this 3x minus 8 can't be touched at this point, okay? So all we do is multiply 20 times 1/4, 20 times 1/5, and whatever's left, then we distribute that, okay? So we don't want to overcomplicate things. We only want to multiply what's on the outside of the parentheses first. So since this is a 20, you could write a 1 under it, if that's what some people like putting their 1 there. I can see that 4 and the denominator goes into that 25 times, but if you don't see that, put that 1 there. Now we have 5 times 1 left over. Then we will rewrite our parentheses. Again, this is a 20 over 1. So 5 goes into 20 4 times. 4 times that 1 right there is 4. And we write down what's in parentheses. As you can see, we don't have fractions. That's the whole point of multiplying both sides by the LCD. It gets rid of all our fractions. So now we have a regular equation without fractions. Alright, let's distribute. 5 times 3x is 15x. 5 times negative 8, we have minus 40 equals 4 times 6x, 24x. And 4 times negative 1, minus 4. Now, what should we do? We should get our x's together. So subtract 15x. That way, our leading coefficient will be positive. As you can see, we'll get a positive leading coefficient. Now, what's remaining on the left side? You really still have a negative 40 equals 24x minus 15x is 9x, and we rewrite our 4, minus 4. Then we need to get that number over here with the other number, or the constant over here with the other constant. So we do the inverse of minus 4. So let me emphasize this. You do the inverse. You don't do the same sign. In order to get rid of it, you do the inverse. So we add 4, not subtract it, okay? Negative 4 plus 4 cancels. Negative 40 plus 4 is negative 36. Now to solve for x, we will divide by 9. Therefore, x equals negative 4. Number 6 contains fractions. So let me rewrite number 6. So what is the LCD of this problem? As you can see, the denominators are 5 and 2. What number can both 5 and 2 can go into? Well, it is 10. So as you can see, I'm going to go ahead and multiply 10. And since we have parentheses here, we can go ahead and concentrate on just multiplying 10 times that 1/5, that fraction here, and multiply 10 times the 1/2. And then once we simplify that, we'll multiply that number times what's in the parentheses. So what is 10 times 1/5, or 1/5 of 10? If you put a 1 here, you can see that 5 goes into 10 2 times. So you have 2 times x plus 3 equals. And on the right side, you have 10 over 1. So 2 goes into 10 5 times. 5 times 1. 5 times 1 is 5. So 5 times x minus 3 is remaining. So we got rid of fractions by multiplying by the LCD. Let's distribute now. 2x plus 6 equals 5x minus 15. I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. Now we just have a 6 equals 5x minus 2x, like terms, are 3x. Is a 3x minus 15. Now since our variable is on the right side, let's get that 15 over this side by adding 15 to both sides, since that was a minus 15. 6 plus 15 is 21. Last thing we need to do to get x by itself, divide by 3. Then x equals 7. Negative 9 plus 0.3 x equals negative 80 minus 1.3x. Let's get our x's together by adding 1.3x. Now what you need to do is get out your calculator. Decimals can be tricky, right? So the advantage that you will have for this exam is a calculator. Negative 9.3 plus 1.3 is negative 8. X equals negative 80. Pretty simple here. How do we get x by itself? Divide by negative 8. That all cancels out because negative divided by negative is positive. X equals 10. Alright, finally we're at number 8. We have negative 2.2x minus 31.36 equals 4 minus 6.4x minus 5.96. What should you do first? Notice that there are like terms on the right side. We can go ahead and get 4 minus 5.96 together. So use your calculator to figure out what's 4 minus 5.96. It's negative 1.96. And I'm going to write down minus 6.4x. Now we need to get our x's together. 1.6.4x plus 6.4x. Alright, negative 2.2x plus 6.4x. That's 4.2x. Then I rewrite everything else. Then we need to get that 31.30, move it to the right side with the other number. So we need to add 31.36 to both sides. Of course that cancels, but in your calculator you need to put negative 1.96 plus 31.36. And what you'll find is you'll get 29.4. When you divide by 4.2, x equals 7. Alright, this concludes this video on solving equations. And solving equations that may contain fractions and decimals. Remember, you can always check your answers. All you have to do is plug these answers back into the x values to see if the left hand side equals the right hand side. So if you really want to check your answers, if you really want to pass this Readiness exam, you would check all your answers before submitting. And you're guaranteed to pass the Readiness exam. Because you'll know if your problem is right or wrong, and you would know whether to go back to correct your answers. Alright, this concludes the video on solving equations.